Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Meenal Dhal from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we'll discuss the module Terminological, Taxonomic and Chronological Problems of Fossils from the paper Human Origin and Evolution. So in this module, we'll discuss about the human fossil ancestors and their discovery. We'll also discuss about the chronological problems associated with fossils. This module will describe the facts related to terminology of the fossils. This module will also clarify the concept of connecting links that leads to the Homo sapiens sapiens, and another objective of this module will be to understand the impact of evolution through the fossil studies. We will also discuss about the identification of fossils by carefully examining the general characteristics of diverse human forms and variants. So, first of all, we'll briefly discuss about the terminology. Terminology, or the application of appropriate word expression in specific context to the subject. Taxonomy refers to that branch of science which is concerned with the systematic classification of the organisms, and the chronology is the arrangement of the events or fossils in the order of their occurrence. In the present module, the terminological, taxonomy and chronology problems of human fossil ancestors will be discussed. The geological timescale starts with the formation of the Earth. Somewhere around 4.6 billion years ago, the first and the longest span of time was the Precambrian, where form of life was very small, simple and soft-bodied. The onset of Cambrian about 570 million years ago marked the rise of shelled animals in the sea. Then followed the ages of the fish, amphibians and reptiles, culminating in the domination of land by the dinosaurs from about 200 to 65 million years ago. Human fossil ancestors, you can see in the figure, illustrates that evolution of modern man is here. The course of human phylogeny, or the human biological evolution, like other mammals, can be followed only from the fossil records. Though the fossil records are fragmentary, the paleoanthropologists have been able to piece them together and draw them an almost complete phylogeny of primates and of modern man, that is Homo sapiens sapiens. The early stages of human biological diversity can only be studied by a comparative anatomy of fossils and also by a comparative biochemistry of present-day human, ape and other primates. Information on the later stages in human evolution are based on the artifacts that include stone tools, pottery, fire hearths and the fossils of other animals along with human fossils. Now we'll discuss Ramapithecus, the oldest fossil. The last and most important hominid from Miocene is Ramapithecus. It is accepted by many scholars to be the first true hominid. Ramapithecus dates back to the time period between 14 to 10 million years ago. It was discovered and christened as Rama's ape by Edward Lewis in year 1934. The specimen was later analyzed by Simmons in the year 1964, and Simmons gave the name Ramapithecus punjabicus to this find, which was a long time thought to be the highest evolved form in the hominid evolution, belonging to the ape group of Dryopithecus. The fossils of Ramapithecus, primarily the teeth and the jaw, come from two areas, the Sivalik Hills in India and Fort Terenan in Kenya. The ecological settings of Fort Terenan and the Sivalik Hill fossil is that of a forest woodland environment. The Greek fossils, being younger, are that of a drier savanna-like environment. The hominid features of Ramapithecus include reduced and vertically implanted incisors and canines, little or no diastema, flattened and thick enameled premolar and molar that appear to be adapted for heavy chewing and processing of heavy foodstuffs. Moreover, the placements of chewing muscles indicated an increased chewing pressure brought to bear on the food being eaten. These features, sufficiently different from the earlier Miocene fossils, indicate Ramapithecus' direction to hominid line, perhaps the first hominid. Ramapithecus specimens are very strongly suggest the exploitation of a new dietary source, most likely seeds, nuts and grasses, that indicate a shift from the softer forest fruit and vegetables relied upon by apes. Here you can see the figure showing the different genera of Australopithecines or Australopithecus. They are the youngest after the youngest Ramapithecus, there is about 4 million year gap, then new hominid form appear. Australopithecines are divided into two genera, Australopithecus, which include the glacial form like Australopithecine africanus, Australopithecine afarensis, Australopithecine ramidus and Australopithecine anemensis, and second form is Paranthropus, which include the robust form like Paranthropus robustus and Paranthropus bucci. Australopithecus genus include the glacial form, and they were roughly 4 feet tall, bipedal and erect, and lived in open savanna country. Their bony structure is less rugged compared to their robust relatives, and they generally lack the sagittal crust appeared to Paranthropus. Their incisors and canines were slightly larger, and premolars and molars were slightly smaller. The general characteristics of Australopithecines were a well-developed forehead suggesting the expansion of frontal lobes of brain, weakly developed supraorbital ridges, an elevated cranial vault indicating a major portion of brain lines above the level of face, unlike pongids where it is behind or below the face level. Then an estimated cranial capacity of 450 to 600 cc. Australopithecus has a slightly larger brain relative to its body size. Another point or characteristic is the skull probably is well balanced and the foramen magnum placed slightly forward. This partially indicates an erect posture. Extremely prognathous but relatively larger jaws in general, and hominid dentition and parabolic dental arcade was a characteristic of Australopithecine. They have no sagittal crest indicating weak temporal muscles. Hominid postural, cranial, skeletal and ilium and pelvis is broad and short indicating a bipedal locomotion. Probably a better runner than a walker. These morphological characteristics of a genus Australopithecus in general suggest them to be ancestors to the modern man. Another species is Paranthropus. This genus includes the robust form which are close to 5 feet in height, erect and efficient biped, and were thus well adapted to the savanna grassland environment which they inhabited during the last Pliocene and early Pleistocene. The fossil P. bossai was from East Africa, which was previously referred as Zizanthropus bossai by the Leakey. These fossils were also discovered from Tanzania, Kenya and Ethiopia. The general characteristics of Paranthropus were the height averaged 5 feet, skull larger than Australopithecus, cranial capacity is around 500 to 600 cc compared to the body size. This animal had a lower brain to body size ratio compared to its Australopithecus counterparts. They have larger supraorbital ridges with conspicuous forehead. Cranial vault is not well rounded and expanded. Moderately developed sagittal crust is present. Massive jaws with moderate prognathism. More extensive neck muscles. Forwardly placed foramen magnum on the skull base. Parabolic dental arcade with slightly more U-shaped entire dentition, probably designed for extreme crushing and grinding. They have postcranial skeleton shows a mixture of gorilloid and hominoid traits. Hand skeleton indicates knuckle walking, divergent big toe. So these are the characteristics of Paranthropus. Chronological implications we will discuss with the Pliocene and Pleistocene fossils who have shown that both hominid and ape-like features. However, the hominid features are overwhelming. The presence of ape-like feature can be accounted for by way of common inheritance from a hominid or pongid ancestors. According to Donald C. Johnson and White, the East African fossil Australopithecus afarensis split into two branches. Australopithecine line represents by A. africanus and P. robustus. P. bossai and hominid line represents by Homo habilis, Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. This split was supposed to have happened 3 million years ago. The Australopithecine line progressively became robust. This pattern generally called two-branch theory. According to this two-branch theory, A. afarensis gave rise to A. afarensis 3 million years ago of the same height living up to 2 million years ago. Next arrived A. robustus, which showed marked increase in the robustness of body, face, jaws and teeth, and it has lived up to 2.3 to 1.8 million years ago. Finally, the last and the most robust form A. bossai lived in East Africa from roughly 1.8 to 1 million years ago. The two-branch theory was widely accepted till the discovery of a new type of hominid skull, that is Australopithecus aethiopicus in northern Kenya in 1985 by Ellen Walker. This skull had massive teeth and ape-like brain. Thus, the revised theory holds a three-line evolutionary sequence, one to A. bossai line, second to Homo and third to Africanus robustus line, having A. afarensis as the common ancestors. Now, who are Homo habilis? In the early 1960s, the Leakeys discovered at Olduvai Gorge, close to the contemporaneous with Australopithecus bossai, a form that appeared much closer to the modern human being. They concluded that they found the first real human being and they called these finds as the Homo habilis. To this day, the taxonomic status of Homo habilis is disputed. Some regard them as more modern Australopithecine form. These forms are considered to be on a direct evolutionary line between the Australopithecines and Homo erectus. The most primitive Paranthropus is best viewed as a side branch of the tree of human evolution. The general characteristics of Homo habilis are: the cranial capacity ranges between 650 to 800 cc. The cranial capacity was greater than that of the Australopithecines and approached that of Homo erectus. The brain of body size ratio also suggested evolutionary advancement. Unlike Australopithecines, the frontal lobes of brain were well developed, the cranial vault was rounded. Hominid dental structure, the premolars are particularly human-like. The mandibles are comparatively less massive than that of the Australopithecines. However, the dental arcade was not parabolic. The hind limb morphology clearly approached the human foot. Homo habilis was a tool maker. The toolkit is referred to as the old one industry. It includes cutting tools, scraping tools, and tools to make tools. Meat, plant, and wood were worked upon. Bones, seeds, and nuts were cracked open. There are evidences of campsites also. Larger brain involved longer gestation, larger newborns, and greater longevity. The brain enlargement is perhaps the cause and the effect of dietary shift in Homo habilis. The chronological implications are that one of the main criteria for inclusion in the genus Homo was brain size. Different authorities had different threshold sizes ranging from 700 to 800 cc. Most Australopithecines were around 500 cc, while Homo erectus was above 1000 cc. The first Homo habilis specimen had a brain size estimated at 680 cc. In the mid-1960s, many people thought it probable that Homo erectus had evolved from some type of Australopithecine. Therefore, it would be natural to find fossils representing transitional form, the result of evolution in action. Rather than create a separate species, this new form should be placed either with its predecessors, the Australopithecines, or with its successors, Homo erectus. There were plenty of other opinions about where Homo habilis fitted into the hominid evolutionary tree. Leakey long held the view that our modern species was in fact direct descendant of Homo habilis. In 1972, Richard also discovered a skull at Kobe Fora which had a cranial capacity of 800 cc. A brain size of this surely meant the creature to be a member of genus Homo. Till today, more than 20 Homo habilis fossils have been found. The version of our evolutionary tree in which A. afferensis gave rise to Homo habilis, which evolved into the Homo erectus, which in turn produced Homo sapiens, has an appealingly neat straight line, but standing back from the main habilis time period, that is about 1.9 to 1.6 million years ago, brings various complications. By 1.6 million years ago, another human species had appeared, the taller, long-legged, bigger-brained Homo erectus. If habilis did evolve into erectus, could such a great evolutionary change have taken place so quickly? One possibility is punctuation, a rapid burst of change in the type of evolutionary process known as punctuated equilibrium. The time between 2 and 1.5 million years ago has been called the crucial humanizing period. Another fossil in that line is Homo erectus after this Homo habilis. In the year 1891, Eugene Dubius discovered a fossil skull cap with few associated teeth and bone from the Solo River region of Java. He provisionally named it Anthropopithecus erectus. By 1894, the position regarding this fossil changed. The upright man-like ape had become Pithecanthropus erectus and the upright ape-like man. The discovery of thigh bone, femur, revealed a distinctly non-ape-like upright instance and gait. This fossil was commonly called as Java man. Homo erectus ranged from Africa to Eurasia from over 1.6 to 0.12 million years ago. A primitive phase characterized this hominid with considerably large brain than any of the Australopithecines, approaching the lower limit of brain capacity in modern human. This hominid made stone tools and knew the use of fire and was probably the direct ancestor of Homo sapien. It is supposed to have evolved side by side, Paranthropus, and become extinct by 0.12 million years ago in the wake of competition from more efficient Homo forms. The general characteristics of Homo erectus were: the cranial capacity of Java man ranged between 800 to 975 cc, that is cubic centimeter, whereas that of Peking man between 850 to 1300 cc. This clearly reveals that Peking man had taken a step forward towards the modern man in terms of cranial capacity. The skull is extremely platycephaly. The frontal region has a large supraorbital torus. However, in Peking man, there is a trend towards the separation of these torus into two supraorbital ridges. Peking man exhibit the beginning of an expansion into a true vertical forehead. The foramen magnum is clearly located in a position indicating that it was habitually erect and bipedal hominid. The face of Homo erectus is broad and large, with broad nasal aperture and larger zygomatic bones. No such diastema is noted in the lower jaw of Peking man. The canines reflect carnivorous nature and molars exhibit taurodontism, that is the large pulp cavity and fused roots. The palate is huge and parabolic. The chin and simian shelf are absent. Linea aspera on the femur indicating the vertical posture or erect posture of the fossil. Homo erectus had a much wider geographical range and diversity of environments. He used fire, lived in caves, used animal skin for clothing and made shelter, and was a big game hunter. It is believed that some kind of a vocal communication, beginning of rituals, formation of nuclear families was possible at this stage. The chronological implication: one of the most plausible theories has been put forward by Grover S. Krantz in 1968. He points out that contemporary hunting and foraging groups with Stone Age technologies engage in what he termed persistence hunting. One of the conspicuous aspects of the transition from the Australopithecine stage to that of Homo erectus is the dramatic expansion of the size of the brain and the development of the cortex. Krantz suggests this evolutionary development underlies an improved memory and thus provided a selective advantage to those individuals who were consequently better able to keep memory images in their mind to motivate their hunting behavior. Now, one does not have to stress persistence hunting as a selective pressure for the brain expansion and increase in its organizational complexity that marked the transition to Homo erectus. Nevertheless, the incorporation of regular cooperative hunting into a primitive social system must have had a profound and extensive impact. And not only social behaviors, the body itself quite probably changed significantly. These changes include physical adaptations to daytime hunting like increased pigmentation of the skin, loss of fur on the body, and increase in the number of sweat glands. Thus, we may with assurance refer to Homo erectus as an extinct ancestral form of human being. Another discovery is the Neanderthal man. The term Neanderthal man is given to an assemblage of fossils showing certain common features which characterize the type of specimen, like the skull cap with limb bones and ribs recovered from a cave in the Neander Valley near Dusseldorf in Germany. Neanderthal basically consists of classic Neanderthal and progressive Neanderthal. The classic Neanderthal has a flattened down brain case, a bun-shaped protuberant occiput, marked projection of the jaws and practically no ape-like feature. The best preserved classic type is that of La Chapelle Auxents in a cave of Corrèze, France. The progressive type, in contrast, had a laterally compressed and higher cranial vault, lower attachments of neck muscle, and medium to fair development of the bony chin. The progressive Neanderthals are the best represented by the Mount Carmel skeletons. General characteristics of Neanderthal were: the cranial capacity is about 1600 cc, which is well above the average Europeans of today. The brain case is elongated and low. The supraorbital ridges are immense. The forehead is low and retreating. The occiput is protuberant and bun-shaped. Face is long and projecting. The orbits are very large. Nose is long and very broad. Upper jaw is strongly prognathous, and the mandible is powerful and the chin is rudimentary. The foramen magnum is situated farther back in the skull, and the lower jaw is massive. The teeth are arranged in a very broad U-shaped arc. The chronological implications of Neanderthal are: the classic Neanderthal seems to have been disappeared between 35,000 to 40,000 years ago, as we have no fossil evidence thereafter. According to one view, they are believed to have been driven out by the migrations of advanced modern forms, which are now referred to as Homo sapiens sapiens. However, some authors believe that Neanderthals gave rise to modern man. Bros and Volpov are of the opinion that there is a continuous development of Neanderthal man to Homo sapiens sapiens. They have noted that in certain sites there are continuous sequences showing a gradual transition in cultural remains from Neanderthal man to modern man. They, however, feel that the gradual increase in the number of specialized tools during the period indicated more efficient technology which developed by end of the Neanderthal period. The next in line is Rhodesian man. In 1921, T. Zwigler found some human remains at Broke Hills in the northern Rhodesia, Africa. The fossils consist of a skull with lower jaw, parts of femora, a tibia, sacrum, portion of two pelvis, and some fragments of bone of another individual. Some bones and stone implements along with broken bones of animals used as food were also discovered. The general characteristics of rhodesian man are: the skull is very long and narrow, being dolichocranium. The cranial capacity ranges between 1280 to 1400 cc. The supraorbital ridges are prominent. The forehead is receding, and the maxillary bones lack canine fossa and are very large and flat. The orbits are high and of great size. Palate is large. Teeth are of modern human proportion. The third molar are reduced in size. Now the chronological implications of rhodesian man are: in 1921, Woodward, on the basis of the position of foramen magnum, considered it to be the human and assigned these to Homo rhodesiensis. However, some feels that they did not have erect posture as indicated by the pelvis and assigned it as Siphanthropus rhodensensis. This connection, however, has not been accepted. Von Bonian feels that the skull, pelvis, femur and tibia indicate erect posture and places the rhodesian man near the point of divergence of Neanderthal and the modern man. In the opinion of Bowley, Neanderthal man, Rhodesian man and modern Australians had a common origin. Rhodesian man may be the African variety of Neanderthals. In the opinion of Houghton, there is sufficient likeliness between Neanderthal and Rhodesian man so as to regard the latter as the variant of the former. The certain features of the Rhodesian man is inferior to Neanderthals and even to Pithecanthropus. The next in line is Homo sapiens. Evolution of modern man from Cro-Magnon is mainly a cultural and technical evolution. It has witnessed advances in the farming techniques, domestication of cattle, dogs and sheep, etc., establishments of towns, extraction of metals from one and their use in arrows, potteries and even ornaments and jewelries. About 3000 BC, the first alloy bronze was also prepared. Now next after this is Cro-Magnon man. In 1868, M. Louis Lartet excavated the rock shelter of Cro-Magnon of the banks of Vézire in the village of Les Isles. This site was yielded several human skeletons. The skull is massive and large in every dimension. The skull is dolichocranial and exhibits a pentagonal contour. The cranial capacity about 1660 cc. The forehead is broad and the occiput bulges behind. The face is relatively flat and very broad. The cheekbones are large and protruding. Nose is narrow, long and high. The maxilla exhibit pronounced prognathism. The chin is prominent. The forearms are long in comparison to the upper arms. And another important feature is a type of flattening of the thigh bone called platymeria, and also side to side flattening of the chin called platynemia. This is attributed to the habit of walking with knees bent. The muscular impressions are strongly marked. Next in Homo sapiens sapiens is Grimaldi man. Grimaldi fossil remains are referred to as European Upper Paleolithic. The discovery was made in cave near Mentone in Italy. In one of the caves called Grotte des Enfants, two skeletons were found in 1901. On the basis of cranial morphology, the Grimaldi skulls are believed to have negroid features. The cranial capacity is around 1454 cc and the skulls are long, narrow and high. The brow ridges are feebly developed as in the negroid crania. The forehead is straight and well developed and slightly bulging. The skull presents a regular elliptically shaped contour with flattened parietal eminences. The face is narrow and short, nose is depressed at the root, the bridge is low and broad, suggesting that the nose is Platyrrhini. The lower jaw is strong with its body very thick. The chin is not greatly developed. The forearm and the legs are very long in relation to the upper arm and thighs respectively. The shaft of the femur has a pronounced curvature and is strongly bent. The Grimaldi material is believed by many anthropologists as definitely negroid and they are commonly accepted as a good evidence of negroid race in Europe during Aurignacian times. Next in line is Chancelede man. The name is derived from the rock shelter near Chancelede where the discovery was made. The deposits yielded the typically fauna and implements belonging to the Magdalenian period. The skeleton lay on its left side in the deepest stratum with its arms folded on its breast and knees doubled up against the body. The body is powdered over with red ochre. The skull of the Chancelede man resembles the crania of Eskimos. It is long and narrow. Supraorbital ridges are slightly developed with forehead bulging and rising vertically. The cranial capacity estimated is around 1530 cc. Face is long and moderately broad. The cheekbones are prominent and strongly developed, which give a flat appearance to the face. The nose is long and narrow and the nasal bridge is broken. The postcranial skeleton indicates that long bones are massive and strong. The muscular impressions are well marked, indicating a muscular body. The stature was short. The upper part of the body longer, unlike European. Femur is slightly bent and the shaft of the tibia has a flattening in the transverse direction and is slightly platynemic. Foot is large with first metatarsal distinctly separated from the second toe just like in the Neanderthal man. Now let us summarize what we have discussed till now. Till now we have discussed the chronological implications of various fossils found in our ancestral lines. The very first fossil which was found was Ramapithecus. Ramapithecus was the oldest, or you can say the first Homo type or transition phase of Homo and ancestral form. Then comes to Australopithecus, where various forms of Australopithecus fossils were found all over the India or all over the world. After Australopithecus, Homo erectus came, and then Homo habilis, Rhodesian man, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens sapiens, Neanderthal man, all these they were come up in a same line and with different characteristics evolving throughout the period. Thank you.